Raid. Shadow Legends. Raid. Shadow Legends offers a more strategic, management-focused take on the genre, as its gameplay largely revolves around collecting heroes and optimizing your squad. The turn-based combat encourages clever and calculated play, which will test the skills of both newcomers and more experienced players. Raid also allows for online battles too. You can team up with other players and take on challenging missions or fight against a rival player's AI-controlled squad, both of which lead to high-quality rewards that can be used to further develop and improve your team. Enlisted. Storm the beaches of Normandy and battle across Europe in this free-to-play World War II shooter. Enlisted offers players the chance to fight and strategize as they take on a number of key campaigns from the conflict, where each new location offers unique weapons, vehicles, and aircraft to aid you in your battle. You'll build and improve your AI squad to incorporate a variety of specialists, from flame troopers to tankers, and with the ability to switch between each soldier under your command. Every avenue of combat from tank to aerial support is open to explore. This MMO is designed to please even the pickiest history buff with its impressive level of detail, particularly the fact that you're limited to the equipment that was historically available for each specific campaign in order to get the job done. World of Tanks. There are over 400 tanks in World of Tanks, and if you revisit this page in the next hour that number will likely have grown. Essentially, if you are a fan of military hardware, you are a fan of World of Tanks. Unlike War Thunder, however, World of Tanks does not ask you to pour hours of research into learning the armor ratings and layout of every vehicle in the game. Instead, World of Tanks takes a more arcade approach. That is not to say there is a lack of sophistication, but rather that the core of the game has always been its fast-paced, arcade action. Like Call of Duty, World of Tanks is easy to learn, but impossible to master. Clashes are won by fine margins and lightning-quick reflexes, while a compelling XP system and tech tree keep players coming back for more. Perhaps it's not very realistic, but its speed and intensity make it one of the best tank games to play. Guild Wars 2. With a storyline that reacts to the player's actions, Guild Wars 2's narrative is unique by MMORPG standards. Instead of traditional quests, players encounter dynamic events that pop up around the game world. Likewise, there are multiple paths to completion for each of these encounters, and intentional or not, your actions in Guild Wars 2 will have consequences. For example, defending a town from a group of rampaging ogres might cause them to return with deadlier weapons or seek out refuge in a nearby cave. You will have to deal with the fallout of these events, whether that means repelling a stronger attack or hunting down and killing the remaining ogres. The result is a free MMO with the questing diversity of one of the best RPGs of all time. What's not to love? Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact offers a lot of everything. An open-world RPG with some of the least intrusive free-to-play mechanics going. After you've chomped through the main story, you're ready to get into the real game, which is exploring the vast, pristine world of Teyvat. Wherever you go there's more to do, rewards to earn, and puzzles to solve. While there's no multiplayer PvP in Genshin Impact, you can play through the enormous open world with up to 3 friends in co-op, whether you just want to relax and unwind by a lake, or slay your way through a few dungeons. There's cross-play, too, so it doesn't matter if your friends aren't playing on PC. World of Warships. World of Warships switches out the twitch shooter elements of World of Tanks for a slowed-down and much more tactical style of play. Warships are leviathans. They crawl and creep across the map, and each one possesses enough power in a single barrage to wipe out anything else. The change of pace makes for action that is more calculated and nerve-wracking. It can take a long time for shots to meet their targets, which means that every moment is spent trying to avoid incoming fire or anticipating where your foe will have moved to. World of Warships is also more cinematic than its on-tracks sibling thanks to the sheer scale its warfare is conducted on. Oh, and it has got some lovely sunsets too, if that is what you want from a free-to-play wargame. War Thunder. Planes, tanks, and ships battling it out forever and ever and ever. That is the ultimate goal of War Thunder. It is a F2P title that specializes in vehicular warfare, with 3 similar but largely separate games under its title: ground forces, aviation, and naval battles. War Thunder's frankly ridiculous number of vehicles all manage to stay unique thanks to the game's realistic damage model, which simulates almost every single aspect of ballistics, from shell type and speed to the thickness and angle of the armor it is hitting. Every single shot is calculated, meaning that real-life tactics like staying hull down or angling your armor to deflect shells are essential skills to master in War Thunder. That realism means it can be a little tricky to get started. Star Conflict. Star Conflict dumps players in the role of an elite space pilot on a quest to track down and fight for alien treasures scattered throughout its expansive sandbox. Essentially, the game's progression is all about acquiring a bigger and bigger collection of ships, from agile fighters to floating behemoths, before finally handing you control of your own fleet. PvE quests and raids see you and your friends facing off against squadrons of aliens or space pirates, while PvP is a looming threat wherever you venture. An impressive tech tree and catalog of ships means there's always reason to keep playing, as you're never far off a new weapon type or ship module. Thanks to Star Conflict Oculus Rift support, this is also one of only free MMOs you can play in VR. BLANKOS. Blanka's Block Party is essentially a giant party thrown by a colorful cast of collectible vinyl figurines. There's a central hub, known as the Junction, where players can go on quests and unlock items for their Blankas, or you can venture into a user-generated party game with your pals. The tools on offer allow you to create all manner of games, and because it's free to play, you can invite everyone you know to test out your ideas. New content will arrive regularly with each new season, locking out older content, meaning all the Blankas and items you can get are essentially limited editions, and the player-owned economy will allow you to trade your valuable acquisitions. CROSSOUT. As varied as it is satisfying, CROSSOUT is a post-apocalyptic MMO action game from Targum Games that gives you the chance to scavenge and craft the materials to build more fearsome vehicles of battle beyond the imagination of any 10-year-old. What more could you possibly want from your online multiplayer games? In what is essentially a free-to-play Mad Max, the game, you customize a unique and wide range of vehicles with dozens of bespoke parts and use them to destroy your enemies in high-octane, action-packed skirmishes. You can play in both PvE and PvP modes, even fighting against player-created bosses. You also have plenty of weapons at your disposal. Rocket launchers and machine guns favor the most offensive and in-your-face players, whilst stealth generators and drones give you a greater choice in your approach. All your explosive efforts go toward your choice of 5 factions, too, earning you new blueprints, missions, parts and storage space. Shooting and building things has never been so lucrative. Star Trek Online. Character creation tools in MMOs let you shape everything from your avatar's jawline and eyelash length to the exact density of their chest hair, but even they have got nothing on the options available in Star Trek Online. Tired of playing as a human? Great! Here you can be a Gorn, Rigelian, Romulan, Klingon, or any other of the 30 race variations available. Questing and progressing in Star Trek Online plays out like episodes from the TV series. One moment you are wandering through space, the next you are having to do deals with, or shoot lasers at, one of the many franchise belligerents. Be it in spaceship battles or on the ground where gameplay takes the form of a third-person shooter, Star Trek Online does a brilliant job of bringing the storylines and tone of the TV shows into an F2P MMO. It even gets updated regularly like a TV show, with expansions like Victory is Life adding the crew from Deep Space Nine to the game. NEVERWINTER. The name and setting of Neverwinter has a long and storied history online, beginning in 1991 with the first graphical MMORPG, before revolutionizing the realm of player-made modules under the stewardship of BioWare with Neverwinter Nights. The rather more modern Neverwinter pulls from both, setting groups of D and AMP.D characters loose in the famous city, while allowing players to write their own stories, with additions like Ravenloft characters being added to the game. There are some inventive community adventures on offer if you're willing to dig. Not that you will have to reach for those if you do not want to. Expansions have taken Neverwinter players to some of the most beloved corners of the Forgotten Realms, including the Underdark and Icewind Dale. Plus, there's also the Baldur's Gate 3 release date to look forward to for more from this glorious world. ARCHEAGE. Finally, an MMO for sailing aficionados. No, not the sweater tied around neck, regatta and finger sandwich type of sailing. Instead, ARCHEAGE's world is full of rum-drinking, kraken-fearing pirates who traverse the enormous oceanic map completing side quests and hoarding loot. Of course, this also makes ARCHEAGE one of the best pirate games on PC. Unlike most MMOs, there's actually stuff to do at sea. And in the air, too. If you're feeling a little seasick, the game also has dragon mounts, reared by players to become fearsome sky-conquering beasts. ARCHEAGE is free to play with an optional subscription, but there's also ARCHEAGE Unchained, a separate but identical game that gives you access to all gated content for a one-time fee. Rifts, as you might expect, are what makes Rift one of the most lively and exciting free MMOs on PC. These titular portals open up unpredictably across the world, spawning in hordes of enemies or gigantic bosses and forcing every player in the area to band together in order to repel the demonic attacks. Of course, Rift is not just a multiplayer adaptation of Whack-A-Mole. It boasts one of the most flexible class systems in the genre, allowing players to create a variety of builds. From the very specific to the jack of all trades, every style of play is catered for. Final Fantasy XIV. Making an MMO out of the beloved Final Fantasy series was never going to be easy. As if to prove that point, Square Enix made a royal mess of Final Fantasy XIV the first time around and had to take another swing at it, eventually turning one of their worst games into one of the best MMOs on PC. Unlike other MMOs, Final Fantasy XIV doesn't force players down the route of having to grind endlessly with multiple characters in order to see which combat class they want to play as. Instead, you just need to make it to level 10 and the ability to switch between the game's 8 combat classes is magically unlocked. It is also one of very few cross-play MMOs, which means you can inhabit the same world as PlayStation users. You lucky thing. SKYFORGE. Free MMOs are rarely as pretty on the eye as buy-to-play, AAA titles. SKYFORGE is the exception. Wander through the sci-fi fantasy-themed planet of ALBION, admiring the beams of sunlight that poke through the foliage or the crisp fidelity of the lightning that is shooting from your character's hands, and it is easy to forget you are playing a game that cost you exactly nothing. But SKYFORGE is more than just a pretty face in an otherwise ungainly genre. Few games do as much to actively encourage experimentation across different classes as SKYFORGE does, allowing the player to switch between classes in an instant, opening up all of the game's combat styles for experimentation and mastery. EVE Online. Not many games boast battles so costly and sprawling that books have been written about them. EVE Online is a free MMO and galactic conquest simulator like nothing else in games, where corporations made up of thousands of players duke it out across an entire solar system. You can start your own venture in this hostile galaxy, but the main draw is petitioning a corporation to hire you and throwing yourself into the life of a space-age peon. Blade and Amp. Soul. Blade and Amp. Soul is a Korean fantasy martial arts MMORPG. And, if that's not enough to pique your interest, frankly, we don't know what will. Perhaps the game's intricately designed world, inspired by the visual style of artist Hung Tae Kim, and 4 unique Magic legends. Though there have been a handful of PC adaptations of the classic Wizards of the Coast card game, Magic: The Gathering has yet to appear in ARPG form, that is, until now. Invites players to roam the world of the MTG multiverse as a spell-wielding planeswalker, battling iconic foes from the original decks using a carefully curated hand that you build throughout the game. Each spell is discarded after casting it, so the next spell in your hand is random. For that reason, it's best to choose your spells carefully in order to optimize their combined effects. But it's not all about the battles. In Magic Legends, you can collect equipment and artifacts to power up your chosen playing style and use that build to explore a range of fantastical realms, each offering a set of unique missions to complete. You can even team up with up to 2 players for multiplayer hack-and-slash sessions, or just to run around the map with, if that's how you prefer to play. ALBION Online. ALBION Online is an MMO without the constraints of character classes. It's unusual, but welcome to not get bogged down in creating a class and feeling obligated to stick to it, especially after sinking hours into your build, which in ALBION Online, is very easy to do. Instead, you build a character from the ground up, and your role in combat can be changed to complement your team and the situation at hand. The player-driven economy and risky nature of losing all your loot in a poorly calculated move against your opponents or from an unprecedented enemy ambush is the main draw in ALBION, a game that pushes tactics and decision-making to the forefront of the genre. SMITE. What makes SMITE different? Switching out the favored top-down view of most MOBAs for a third-person, over-the-shoulder view that brings players closer to the action. It is a small tweak, but it is one that adds a lot to the flavor and pace. The result is that SMITE feels more like an action game, but all the MOBA fundamentals are in place: roles, creeps, towers, lanes, and, of course, the best SMITE gods. Like Dota 2 and League of Legends, SMITE's main mode features 2 teams of 5 gods engaging in a gladiatorial-themed bout for dominance of the arena. Unlike those MOBA behemoths, SMITE boasts a glut of other game mode variants like Joust, which reduces the number of lanes to just 1, and Assault, which randomly allocates a god to every player. So if you are not chasing the esports prize pools, there is enough gameplay variety to keep players coming back for more. World of Warplanes. With over 4,000 customization options across 5 different airborne vessels, World of Warplanes is a free MMO that will keep you at the center of its eternal conflict set during the golden age of military aviation for a good long time. That said, this WW2 game is no grind. This action-heavy dogfighter excels when you find yourself amid its 12-on-12 scraps. Wargaming's sky-based battler is easy on the eye, too. Each cloud-covered canvas is as full of beauty as it is death and destruction. TERA. If you have played a whole bunch of MMOs, you may be tired of the traditional combat systems that so many of them use. Bucking the trend is TERA, which trades in click-to-attack mechanics for fast and fluid third-person action combat. It is so action-focused, in fact, that you can even use a controller. Think Devil May Cry as an MMO and you are halfway there. That rapid combat does not mean there is no RPG depth, though. Everything you would expect from a massive MMO is right here, from expansive open worlds to intricate skill trees. The Korean heritage shines, too, with detailed character designs and all sorts of monster varieties to get your blade stuck into. RUNESCAPE. At over 15 years of age, RUNESCAPE isn't far off being able to buy itself a pint at the pub. You don't get to that age in that industry without being one of the best PC games. By gaming standards it should be abandoned and decrepit, but with a still thriving community, one of the best free-to-play models around and updates so regular it's nearly impossible to keep track of, RUNESCAPE still feels as young and fresh as it did in the early 2000s. Quests, new characters, festive events and entirely new features have come and gone in their hundreds. RUNESCAPE is also one of the friendliest MMOs around, with a community of veterans who are always willing to lend a hand to a noob in need. Even after some graphical upgrades, it's not the easiest MMO on the eyes, but that does at least mean you can run it on a potato. PALADINS. A first-person shooter game with cartoon visuals and champions. PALADINS might have a lot in common with Blizzard's Overwatch, but it is worth seeking out for more than the fact that it is free. Developed by Hi-Rez Studios, who made the massively popular MOBA SMITE, PALADINS is built upon a simple class system that categorizes its champions by their main strategy on the battlefield. Damage, support, flank and frontline are the champion types players can choose from, which makes deciphering their strengths and weaknesses dead easy. Playing as a flank champion like Skye will mean you are best suited to attacking key objectives from behind enemy lines, whereas a front-line champion excels at holding the line and stopping enemies from getting through. Ultimate meters for each hero also mean that the action never results in a stalemate by ensuring every player has an ace up their sleeve that can potentially turn the tide of the match. Combine these core elements with constant updates that bring additions such as the Paladins Battle Royale mode, and you have a shooter that will keep you entertained for years. DREADNOUGht. Anybody with taste will know that there is nothing better in life than piloting a massive spaceship. DREADNOUGht, a 5v5 space combat sim from Yager Development, kindly lets you do this, without hours upon hours of training. In DREADNOUGht, it will not just be you looking cool in the pilot seat, your ship will too. You can customize every last element of your ship so your airborne enemies can gawp at how fly you're looking before they get blown to smithereens. The game has several tactical team-based modes to explore as you look to expand your fleet. If you're looking for some of the best space games on PC and don't want to spend a penny, then you can't go wrong with DREADNOUGht. League of Legends. League of Legends player count of almost 67 million means you'll never struggle to find a game in Riot's sensationally popular MOBA. Following a similar formula to that of the original Dota, League of Legends is significantly more accessible than its competition, and a constantly expanding and updating meta ensures that even the pros are still learning the game. Part of that meta is the roster of 137 LoL champions, who get buffed and nerfed on a regular basis. LoL also boasts some of the biggest esports prize pools out there, if you fancy yourself as a future pro. And if you were into LoL back in the day and have been out of the game for a while, League of Legends Tournament Mode is perfect to get you back on board. Path of Exile. An action RPG cut from the same cloth as the Diablo games, Path of Exile combines grim fantasy, compelling combat, and an extensive selection of gear, abilities and upgrades to keep players grinding away for hours on end. Better still, you won't just be retreading the same old ground every time you log in either, because every area is randomly generated across all servers, so the dungeon you and your friends are battling through will be different every time you tackle it. It's also an MMO that receives a massive content update and competitive shake-up every 3 months, with the upcoming PoE 3.9 update, Conquerors of the Atlas adding heaps of new items and challenges to the game. Better yet, we can look forward to the upcoming Path of Exile 2 release date, which began as an update but developed into a fully fledged sequel. Path of Exile also manages to shed some positive light on that most loathed of all monetization strategies, microtransactions. The game's developers are so staunchly against pay-to-win business models that they've included only ethical microtransactions in their game, by which they mean they add no gameplay advantages to the customer whatsoever. Lord of the Rings Online. Wouldn't it be nice to enter an MMO without having to plunge multiple hours wrapping your head around its lore? Chances are you will already know the basics of Tolkien's Middle-earth before heading into Lord of the Rings Online, so that is half the battle. If the recent Middle-earth Shadow of War didn't scratch that Tolkien itch, then perhaps this free MMO will. The other half is avoiding all the quests, NPCs and PvP encounters so you can get on with what you're really there to do. Explore all the most famous locations from the franchise, locations like Rohan, Moria, and the Shire. In fact, pretty much every setting in the lore has made it into the game in some form. You can even waltz right through the gates of Mordor contrary to the popular meme. Although in typical MMO fashion you will have to do a whole lot of farming in order to meet the level requirements of some areas. Star Wars: The Old Republic. When you are starting out Star Wars: The Old Republic, it will not strike you as a unique MMO. You get some story, pick a faction and a class, and do some typically grindy missions for a while. Surprisingly though, that story soon gets better, a lot better, and you quickly find yourself pouring hours into the game just to get to the next cutscene. While it began life as a subscription-based MMO, SWTOR is now also completely playable for free, although you should expect leveling up to take a little bit longer. If you fancy playing as a slave-turned-Sith or an Imperial agent, though, it is a worthwhile grind. SWTOR isn't just an MMO with a Star Wars lick of paint, it's one of the best Star Wars games around. World of Warcraft. One of the most famous and adored MMOs around, and one that most associate with a hefty subscription fee, World of Warcraft actually has a free-to-play trial now, although you won't be able to take your character above level 20. While the starter edition of WoW limits a few features, there is enough to do before hitting the level cap to make this a worthwhile entry. You may even get to see some of the best World of Warcraft moments before your time runs out. World of Warcraft earned the record for having the most concurrent subscriptions, 12 million, for a reason. Azeroth is enormous and ever-growing thanks to new expansions like Battle for Azeroth, and it will be years before you feel like you've seen everything that is hidden away in its various dungeons, cities and regions. So while PC gaming may have a reputation for being rather expensive, our list proves otherwise. You can have a fantastic time without needing to buy a single game. Many of the free games are even some of the best MMOs available today. So what are you waiting for? It's time to dive into a new world.